about to... Can you just wait till we're ready? Are you ready now?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
hang on just one second.
We can respond. We need more. Where's mama? Mother, kuje wewe, you don't need.
All right, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this exit statement from the African civil societies, but also bringing together our Pan-African parliamentarians. And our statement that we're going to read today reads, Baku should not be the final resting place for the Paris Agreement. We have been here for 2 weeks. We came here pregnant with expectations, and we carried the aspirations of the African people, and hoping that one of the most elusive issues, which is climate finance, would actually be sorted here. So we thought we'd come here with a goal, and a goal that reflects the needs of our people who are dying in Malawi, in Kenya, in Nigeria, and in other places as a result of climate change. And therefore, we read our statements, and with me, I also have a team that's going to unpack that particular statement. And from my extreme right, I have Martha Bekele, who is actually a climate finance expert, and within our network, we have Zadishire Hoye, who is going to take us through the statement. And number 3, from my extreme right, we have Dr. Mithika Mwenda, who is the Executive Director, Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Next to him, we have our parliamentarian from Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Sakata Gari, who is the chair of the Rural Economy, Agriculture, and Environment within Pan-African Parliament. And then we have Susan Atieno, who is actually the country director, Action Aid. And last but not least, we have Dr. Tinashe Gumbo, representing the faith community from Africa through the All Africa Conference of Churches. So without further ado, I want to invite Zadishire Hoye, our youth, who is going to take us through the statement in the next about 7 minutes. Zadishire, you have the floor.
Baku should not be the final resting place for the Paris Agreement. African stakeholders, bringing together diverse groups, including civil society, women, youth, faith-based networks, indigenous groups, pastoralists, wish to express our deepest disappointment at the conclusion of COP29 in Baku. Despite this year's negotiations being billed as pivotal for securing real progress on the new collective quantified goal on climate finance, COP29 has fallen alarmingly short of addressing Africa's urgent and development challenges. Once again, Baku seems to repeat the same pattern from previous COPs, where negotiations are deliberately dragged through snail pace for 2 weeks, only for the final card to be released by invisible powers at the last minute. A take-or-leave offer that is pushed into the throats of helpless poor countries. The NCQG was expected to set a transformative financial framework to replace the disputed and unfulfilled $100 billion US annual pledge by 2025. For Africa, the NCQG represents a critical opportunity to unlock resources necessary to address climate-induced crisis, adapt to worsening impacts, and transition to low-carbon economies. However, COP29 has witnessed an entrenched stalemate, with developed countries resisting commitments that reflect the true scale of Africa's needs. The NCQG negotiations should have been a turning point for climate finance justice. Instead, we are presented with vague, incremental language that disregards the scale of loss and damage, underfunds adaptation, and prioritizes the interests of the wealthy over the communities on the front lines of the crisis. The worst fear is imminent. It's either there'll be no deal or COP29 will be historic in delivering a bad deal. There will be no decision worth the description of the nature of the goal anticipated on the NCQG that will come out of Baku. COP29 is destined to be a disastrous closure. Developed countries have again failed communities on the front line of the climate crisis after paying lofty promises at the onset of the conference. Christened as the COP of climate finance by the AGN, this COP leaves a vast majority of vulnerable communities in Africa vanquished and their hopes in the ability of multilateral processes to deliver justice dry. We express solidarity with the AGN and the G77 plus China on their demand for the $1.3 trillion quantum of climate finance that is new, additional, predictable, grant-based, and non-debt inducing. It is disheartening that just a few hours before the curtains fall on COP29, parties have not agreed on the most awaited quantum, an essential element for the NCQG. Yet estimates on the costed needs in nationally determined contributions of developing countries are at 5.06 to 6.87 trillion up until 2030. In few hours to closure, the critical purpose of Baku remains empty. With no quantum agreed, the negotiations remain on nothingness, as figures proposed remain far away from the magnitude of needs on the ground. In the current status, Baku climate talks is predictably destined to fail. As matters stand, the core deliverable for COP29 is not only far off sight, but achieving a flawed deal is in offing. We urge the AGN to heed our earlier advice. No deal for a bad deal is a good deal. Stalled progress on key issues are as follows. NCQG. Baku has failed to secure a financial goal aligned with the needs of developing nations, leaving Africa's adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage priorities dangerously underfunded. Without clear mechanisms and guarantees for predictable and accessible funding, African countries remain exposed to climate shocks, threatening livelihoods, economies, and ecosystems. Adaptation finance. Despite strong advocacy from the AGN and civil society, developed countries are reluctant to commit to the means of implementation, largely climate finance to adaptation, through the nationally adaptation plans. This failure perpetuates Africa's chronic underfunding in addressing the impacts of floods, droughts, and other climate-driven disasters. Equally, it's a strong message to Africa and other developing countries that we are engaging in a mere academic exercise in the global goal on adaptation, as there's no financial commitment to implement the NAPs. Fossil fuel phase-out. COP29 has failed people and the planet. The current language in negotiation is not strong on the phase-out of fossil fuels. It is a death sentence. The lack of ambition undermines global efforts to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, leaving Africa's communities increasingly vulnerable to climate disasters. The Loss and Damage Fund remains grossly underfunded and inaccessible to those most affected. The extremely low level of pledges secured in Baku to this fund is a demonstration of the continued neglect of climate reparations owed to vulnerable countries. COP29's likely outcome, we fear, reveals the systematic inequalities at the heart of internal climate negotiations. The disappropriate influence of fossil fuel lobbyists and developed countries has drowned out the voices of the vulnerable and the marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zadishire, for taking us through the statement. Now I'm going to have my panel unpack that in just 2 minutes per person. And I want to start with Dr. Mithika Mwenda, the Executive Director, Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. And we were very clear from the African community that we are looking for 1.3 trillion, and this is not rocket science. It is something informed, by the needs on the ground. But for what you're hearing from the rooms, the nuances in the rooms, is that we are nowhere near, coming, together and agreeing on a quantum. Now, can you unpack this statement, Dr. Mithika, that no deal, is still a better deal, than a bad deal? in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And as the statement has rightly indicated, most of us started living as early as yesterday. And as usual, what we notice is that there is apparent delay. And that delay could be deliberate. And this is not unique to the COP29. The industrialized countries uses various tricks. Sorry. They use various tricks so that they secure what they want. Now we hear that there is a possible extension of this session. And what will be the implication of that? Most African delegates have started and booked their flights based on the schedule of the COP today. And so what will happen, because most of them may not have resources, and this may be just taken just lightly. For an industrialized country delegate, it's easy for them because they have excess money, they have resources, they have capacity. So for them, they are going to change their tickets and then they are going to continue. What will happen to our poor delegates? They will not be able to change their tickets, so they are going to be away. What will that happen? Whatever will be agreed either tomorrow or on Sunday is not going to be consistent with us, because the imperative of procedural justice has been now defeated. Deliberately, we have delayed, and that's what has been happening, and now we miss the last very important sessions of negotiations so that we push for what is required for us. We say, as per our statement, that a bad deal is a bad deal. We are not going to accept as Africa. We are going to declare COP29 a failure if it doesn't deliver on the quantum, which is based on science and metrics. The $1.3 trillion is not just coming from the skies. It is designed out of some studies and analysis. And so we cannot go below this. You remember the $100 billion which we have been talking about never came. It is just a tiny minority of countries. In 2009, led by Barack Obama and other rich countries, and then they said we have we have $100 billion. Is this what they are going to repeat? Time will tell. But they are going to be judged harshly by history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mithika. And now I want to move very quickly to Mother Bekele. Mother Bekele, you've been in those rooms. Is there some hope? Is what is happening in here or in there inspire hope, especially for the African continent?
I'm sorry, but I can't do that, because what I heard is a big gap, something that cannot be bridged. They are telling us, even in this room, I've heard that there is no enough money. But guess what? Every year they raise 30 million US dollars through financial transaction taxes. They spent 2.2 trillion in 2023 on global defense. They are expected to grow the space economy, going to the space, to 1.8 trillion by 2035 from the current $630 billion. Military aid, go and calculate what UK, US, EU managed to mobilize for military aid for Ukraine by March 2024, and you will see that they did that with US $69.2 billion. Fossil subsidies, we know 7 trillion. So don't tell us that there is no enough money. There is money, but not for climate action. They also want to tell us that there are emerging economies that need to contribute. Fine, there is muscle, there is financial muscle. However, they can top up voluntarily, but we need to go back to the basics and demand for polluters pay. At the end of the day, we will also wait in a few weeks for the International Court of Justice that is expected to have a statement on the obligations of states in respect to climate change. We demand for climate justice, we demand for climate finance justice. Let us not wait for racists and capitalists win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mother. And I want to quickly shift to Dr. Tinashe Gumbo, representing, of course, the faith communities in Africa. Now, justice, delayed. It's actually justice denied. Now, what is the moral imperative of this delayed decision on NSQG?
Indeed, thank you so much, Charles. As people of faith, we hope, and we normally carry hope, and hope normally assists us to survive. But at this particular moment, I think our hope is being tested, our faith is being tested. We have been hoping for the betterment of our people. And indeed, we are coming from a context where our people are suffering. I think you have heard all those cyclones that affected our continent this year. And we were hoping that at least this was going to be the moment for us to be assisted to address those challenges. Inspired by the spirit of the Paris Agreement, we thought this was the moment for us to be assisted. But from what is coming out from our technical people, our technical partners, it looks like, again, we are going for the disappointment. And we are not very happy as faith actors. And as a result, we are then challenged to repeat what I said last week, to say, at times we are called to reflect on our hope so that we fulfill, so that we push and pursue justice for the purpose of our people. So we are not very happy, and we don't know even how to convey this message to the people who are on the ground, who are suffering, who have been affected by the various disasters. So it's a moment of disaster for us, because we always say this is a matter of urgency, but we are not saying the urgency that it deserves. So we are not happy at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Tinashe. I want to quickly shift to Susan. In maybe 1.5 minutes, where does this leave the women and children of Africa?
Thank you, Charles. Just to say that whether this was a finance COP, it's a true lie. It was a hope that we had as women, but it's a true lie in terms of fulfilling it and meeting it. We know that the North is keen on seeing women die as they allocate funds for continued wars and other priorities that do not save the lives of women. Why is the South now being blamed for slowing negotiations when we've been here for 2 weeks participating in negotiations and negotiating on what began not in the 2 weeks but began elsewhere before the 2 weeks? And instead of paying for their errors and conversations and others to be involved is on high tones of just trying to paint the South as delaying without looking at the South as those who are suffering the repercussions the most. Now, we continue holding on to this, that it is their interest, it's the interest of the North that women continue to suffer in the African continent as they continue to frustrate the talks. And what we are also saying is that the failure even to focus on the text, talking on the hows, is taking us back to the archaic processes, systems and structures on managing global financing that at the end of the day does not guarantee access for the women whom we left at home. They could not come here because of finances, and we are going back without hope around the finances. So if up to this hour there's no agreement, if up to this minute the figures that are on the table are figures that are quite miserable, then it's really for us to say that it's in the interest of the North to see that women continue to suffer the climate repercussions. Women continue to die. Young girls continue to be married early enough because then they are compensating their families, and this is quite sad for a group of countries that purport to be champions, climate champions globally.
Thank you so much, Susan. And now, very quickly, I want to turn to Honorable Sakata Gari. You, our readers, you, our African parliamentarians, we look unto you for leadership. Where are we going to go after this?
Ok, merci, thank you. Je vais parler en français. Je représente le Parlement panafricain en tant que président de la commission agriculture et changement climatique et environnement. Mon message, en fait, est un message bref de soutien au gouvernement africain, à la société civile et au groupe de négociateurs. Et en même temps, en tant que parlementaires africains, nous recoupons toutes les inquiétudes de parlements ainsi que des peuples africains sur les questions qui sont liées au changement climatique. Et en représentant tous ces peuples, nous portons leur voix en montrant que ces peuples africains sont en train de souffrir des changements climatiques dus aux activités intenses des autres continents. Et en principe, en vertu du principe du pollueur-payeur, ceux qui polluent plus devaient davantage plus payer. Et c'est ce que les peuples africains sont en train d'attendre. Alors, en venant ici, nous nous attendions et nous attendons encore à des résultats très tangibles et on espère bel et bien en avoir. Et le pape, dont le Parlement panafricain soutient et est solidaire avec les gouvernements africains, la société civile de tout genre, mais qui soutiennent les activités, le financement en faveur des pays africains, mais également le groupe des négociateurs, pour que le deal qui sera trouvé finalement soit favorable pour toutes nos communautés qui sont affectées par le changement climatique. Nous voudrons donc noter, en tant que parlementaires africains, que la participation aux différentes COP ne doit pas se limiter à un niveau rituel ou de simples déclarations, mais cela doit aboutir à des résultats tangibles, des résultats concrets en faveur de nos communautés. Je voudrais donc conclure que nous sommes là pour agir pour le futur, notre futur, pour le futur de nos enfants, ainsi que pour le futur de l'humanité tout entière. Nous sommes donc pour la justice et l'équité climatique. On vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Sakata Gari, for those beautiful remarks. I now want to usher in Dr. Mithika. There is always a silver lining in every dark cloud. And this one thing that put a smile in our face is something that Dr. Mithika will tell us.
So, ladies and gentlemen, having heard from all the cross-section of partners here, you see this represents the hope of the people. We, of course, are very disappointed with these negotiations. We will, of course, be disappointed by the outcome here. The indicators are very clear, but still we want to encourage our people. Our people are the solutions. On the ground, in communities, we are providing solutions. Women, young people, fisherfolk, smallholder farmers, we are doing very transformative work at a very local level. We are the ones who are ensuring that people eat. We have sufficient food and everything. And so, the struggle will continue. With or without a deal, whether a bad deal or a good deal here, we are going to reach where we want, a transformative change, which is everything. Economic justice, social justice, debt. We want to work with all movement. We want to bring everyone together. And that's why I want to assure you we are reaching out to others who are like-minded, both at the civil society and even at the governmental level. The inequalities is not only limited for us to only the governments in the north, but even for us, even at the civil society, the issue of equality is very important. So in the movement we are building, in the roadmap towards the Belém, we want to work together. And we promise that it is out of that, the issue of really listening to each other, working together is very important. That is when we are going to deliver what we want. And so a good example has been set. We have worked with our civil society in Azerbaijan. They are remotely disconnected by circumstances, but we believe that we need to lift others. We need to work with others. We have acknowledged even the work which has been done, but against all circumstances, against all challenges, that we want to ensure that we work with allies and adversaries so that we bring them together, we build that movement. The North will never hear anything apart from the pressure. We need critical mass, we need numbers. So we want to challenge even the global movement, even the civil society, and everybody. There is no way we can win this war when we are fragmented. We need to work together with the young people. We need to work together with the parliamentarians. We need to work together with women across the world. We need to work with the farmers of the world, indigenous people, but we need that unity. Whether it is North or South, South-South collaboration, but should be done within the spirit of trust. We need trust building. We need to trust each other. We need to work with each other. And we in Africa are ready to work with others who are ready to work with us. Thank you very much, Charles.
So thank you so much, Dr. Mithika, and thank you for taking note, of the hospitality of the people of Azerbaijan. If there's one COP that was well organized in terms of logistics, it was this COP. So we thank the NGO Forum, particularly the leadership of Ramil. We also appreciate the media, again, first and foremost from Azerbaijan. We have AZ News, we have CBC, AZ TV, APA, and of course, our media from Africa. I know we had PAMAC, we had Citizen, we had Nation, we had KBC, and we had others. So we take this opportunity to also appreciate you for that. So we are grateful for your support, and we hope to continue, of course, engaging more. So after this, we're still expecting that new text that is coming up, but as you've heard, this does not inspire hope. And we're asking ourselves, are we not members of the same village? And what is happening in Africa, of course, has implications, to others in other regions. And therefore, we must come together, we must work together in ensuring that we save this planet. It is the only terrestrial ball we have. It is the only place that we can be able to call home, and it's our common home. So let's work together. Let's make sure that the decision that we are going to agree on is a decision that is going to reflect the needs, especially of the vulnerable communities. Indeed, the 1.3 trillion is indeed actually a conservative figure. Africa alone requires about $3 trillion to implement NDCs alone, and that is Africa alone. So we feel that even this 1.3 is a conservative figure, and therefore we should not have much of a deal discussing this. If countries are able to invest more in war, if countries are able to invest, in those exploration activities and so on and so forth, for sure, we can be able to deal with this life-threatening human challenge, and this is climate change. So thank you so very much. We hope to interact with you more as we move out. Thank you.